if you've been watching the show for any period of time, you'll know that we have taken Dave Rubin at his word when he said that there's a huge shift in the country. Well, first off, when he said, like, I'm a real liberal. Just the left has gone awry. And then to, like, I'm a centrist. Actually, no, I'm on the right. And we've watched Dave Rubin move. I mean, Dave Rubin's been on a journey. And we watched when he said I can feel something happening in the country and people are leaving the Democratic Party. And we should say that he was able successfully to time that right before the biggest turnout the Democrats have ever had, two different occasions, actually, in terms of elections. That being 2018 and then 2020. And then I think I wasn't following in 2022.
So he's well-traveled, but he hasn't learned a lot.
No, he keeps going around and round in circles. And now he thinks that atheism is dead at a time where people are becoming significantly less religious. It's sort of fascinating to watch this.
Because wasn't this his thing?
Well, that was ostensibly his thing. Just like an
anti-Arab, anti-Muslim atheist.
Sam Harris was also one of these new atheists who just oddly, somehow he was a little bit more atheist when it came to, let's say, Islam than he was with other religions. And if you go back, and I don't know if there's any record of this, but I certainly was aware of it at the time. If you go back to his early days as he starts to get into politics, as opposed to him being a meditation guru or a mindfulness guru, you will see that he would tour the country, and the majority of places he was going was actually like temple brotherhoods, which is like sort of like, I don't know what the equivalent is in churches, but like this is like where like, and now I imagine maybe they're a little bit less gendered in Reform temples, but like this is sponsored by like the group of guys who come, they don't go to Hebrew school anymore. They're all adults, but they get together and they'll have like, cultural things. And one of them was always Sam Harris, oddly coming in to talk about atheism, but I suspect his atheism was a little bit more specific. But anyways, here is Dave Rubin and Bret Weinstein. Now, this is the Weinstein who was the
anti-vaxxer.
Oh, the anti-vaxxer. Yeah. Okay.
Some of which really were no longer necessary, many of which were still essential, but for reasons that were not literally explained in the documents in question. And I know because for a while I was pretty close to the only evolutionary biologist trying to bridge this gap and speaking to religious people and saying, look, my colleagues are telling you you're sick with a mind virus. I know that's not right.
Can we just pause there? So what he's saying is the scientists were telling religious people they're sick with a mind virus. That is actually language that you use, Bret.
Yeah.
When I say people are like religious or whatever, I don't say that's a mind virus. I say that's a long sort of traditional superstition that people like.
I think we specifically talking about is the idea of intelligent design, which was very popular in the late aughts. And again, that is not how scientists really talk. Maybe in private they say this to, like it's like a mind virus, but they're not going out to like the religious community and saying that. It's sort of strange. But this is like, this reeks of the straw manning that Bret Weinstein like launched his podcast career with by quitting from what was it, Oregon State Evergreen because he refused to participate. What was it, like the slave day?
The day of absence. He thought was racist. I mean, this is after he had became a sort of focal point for racial divide on the campus by saying that the union agreed upon contracts with regards to diversity. He had a big problem with that and said that was the union being taken for a ride by wokeness. So he had a few things going on there with
big labor guy.
Yeah.
My colleagues are telling you you're sick with a mind virus. I know that's not right. Doesn't mean that what you think took place literally happened, and we have to have that conversation. What if what you believe is important but not literal, right? Getting there from an evolutionary perspective, if we could have done that earlier and not temporarily flirted with the idea that simple atheism was somehow a sophisticated way of navigating through life, then maybe we could have, maybe those people who had long-standing traditions that contained wisdom that might have prevented this would have had more power when it mattered. I really think that's
so you must be pleased then in that there doesn't seem to be much of an atheist movement left in America. I don't know if pleased is the right word, but it does, I think that the Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson debates sort of put an end to that movement in America.
As they should.
I mean, this is like so myopic that it is fascinating. There is no debate about atheism anymore.
No,
He's just really
the
talking
atheist
about,
movement.
No, the atheist movement. He's just talking about like sort of, to the extent that there's not, an atheist movement in this country.
Yeah.
It is the dog catching the car type of situation. Like we are down to like where it's sort of like. Broadly just stuck with fundamentalists, and the idea that you can argue with fundamentalists about intelligent design, or that you can sort of negotiate this way, it's absurd. We're talking about. I
just want to say,
just to be clear, that there is in Texas a woman who has a fetus that doctors. Scientists all say is not viable, and that to not abort it at 20 weeks will mean that ultimately she may have to have a C-section and destroy her ability to have other children, never mind putting herself at even graver risk. And Texas is essentially forcing her to carry that fetus to term. Or at the very least, continue to carry it while they decide what they're going to decide for her. And if you don't think that's a function of religious fundamentalism, I got a story about Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson putting the atheist movement to rest in their great debate series, which nobody ever heard that happened.
Never heard that happen. I mean, as somebody who was a new atheist, I literally had a Richard Dawkins Foundation T-shirt in 2008 that I was always too ashamed to wear outside.
I mean,
which
even
is
then
ironic
you knew.
for an out T-shirt. But that stuff, no one cares about that because the sort of clash of civilizations frame for what's going on in the world, whether it's Israel, Palestine, or wherever, is bullshit. It wasn't actually explanatory, and actually there's much deeper things like politics and political structures and things like that you have to deal with the actual history as opposed to just a few charlatans on YouTube talking about the Quran.
Yeah, and which ideas are better or whatever. It's inherently racist, people understand. But I also have to push back on the notion that there was like this mass atheist movement. Like there has been a precipitous decline in religiosity. So like if that's his definition of an atheist movement, then there's no signs that it's declining. And in fact, religiosity has precipitously declined for decades at this point. But like in terms of political movement, I don't know what the hell he's even talking about. No, because he's talking about media.
Yeah, he's talking
about Bill Maher. He's talking about Sam Harris. He's talking about their view count.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He's so myopic.
And that's
the only thing that's happening is literally in his very narrow bubble of a world. But let's continue.
Jordan Peterson debates sort of put an end to that movement in America.
As they should have, but I'm not thrilled with what I'm seeing replace it. And I think there's let's put it this way. If we take your question about what could we have said to the people of 1995 to get them to save us from...
He's not, you can go back. They're not thrilled with what's replacing it because the people that are replacing it are not them, because they are now losers in the eye. Like they're basically on the decline when it comes to the right-wing media. And so they're lamenting the fact that they don't have the influence that they once did. That's all this is. But sorry, you can go back.
And I think there's let's put it this way. If we take your question about what could we have said to the people of 1995 to get them to save us from the world of 2023, the coming calamity that is going to happen if we just simply embrace the religious doctrines, philosophies, and values of the past and hope that we can now ride out the storm, That's when we could stop now by having a conversation that says, look, it was wrong to dispense with these compendiums of wisdom that we've been handed in all of these traditions. But
Sorry, we missed
those
let me just
compendiums.
back up. We missed a little bit of context, which is that this conversation started off with them talking about how 1995 was when we achieved the closest to Enlightenment values, and it's all been sort of downhill since then.
What was it in 95 that achieved that?
Just less wokeness. People were, they could make jokes back then.
Oh, right. That's true. Yes.
I think one sort of thing later that comes up like maybe 20 minutes later is Dave Rubin's like, the gay marriage thing, it was glad that we added that since 95. But
Right. Right.
Of wisdom were built by natural selection in an environment we no longer live in. And so we are stuck in a terrible problem, which is you can't embrace the solutions of the past to get out of the problems of the present, and you can't abandon the solutions of the past because they're outdated, because you'll end up abandoning all sorts of stuff that matters in ways you don't know about. So that is, I don't want to candy coat it.
Yeah.
There's no simple solution to that doesn't involve repeatedly injuring ourselves as a civilization as we discover which fraction of those traditions is still relevant, which fraction has become toxic and inappropriate, what it should be replaced with. That's a very long-term puzzle that you can only solve if you're careful about it. There's no solution you can deliver in the present and say, here's the subset of those traditions that's still relevant. Here's the part that needs to be replaced. Here's what it needs to be replaced with. That's an evolutionary process that's going to do it.
What does that tell you about the evolutionary process of the forces that have led us here on the negative side? So if the forces on the positive side and the ideas of classical liberalism, let's say, and the things that have been good for the last 250 years, if those are pretty good but clearly
Maybe wokeness
faltering,
evolved.
what does it tell you about the bad ideas that somehow got into the system?
There are a couple of concepts.
Know what he's talking
And I'll
about.
step back 1 second.
Yeah.
What
Yeah, just to decode this a little bit, the real grievances they have but don't want to specifically address is Sam Harris thinks COVID is real.
Yes. This is so funny about this. This is all just a subtweet as to like, this is just so petty. These guys are on the outs with this, like Sam Harris is no longer like offering his intellectual imprimatur to them, which of course was also always like sort of built on a house of sand, or as I should say, like a foundation of sand anyways. He just parlayed a good career as a mindfulness, podcaster into something broader. Or he was his philosophy too, as I recall. His he had all the thought experiments about torture, just oddly around the time where the country was actually debating the legality and the efficacy and the morality of actual torture, not thought experiment torture. It's just unbelievable. Nerds don't argue about God on stream anymore. Atheism is dead. Left for Beret says as a question. Indeed. We got to just update on this story about we talked about this on Friday. There is we told you this story about a 31-year-old woman who is 20 weeks pregnant. She, her fetus has a genetic problem known as trisomy 18. Cox learned she was pregnant for a third time in August. Right? That's weirdly stated. But she learned that she was pregnant in August. She had been pregnant 2 times before. She was told weeks later that her baby had high risk for a condition known as trisomy 18, which has a very high likelihood of miscarriage or stillbirth and low survival rates. This is according to her lawsuit. Doctors have told Cox that if the baby's heartbeat were to stop, inducing labor would carry a risk of a uterine rupture because of her 2 prior cesarean sections, and another C-section at full term would endanger her ability to carry another child. Attorney General Ken Paxton says that she doesn't reach the criteria to get permission from the state to end her pregnancy. And so he, after it was found in a Travis County court that she should be allowed to have control over her own body and have a divorce to avoid destroying her reproductive organs or ability, Ken Paxton took it to the Supreme Court of Texas, and they basically said, we're going to give a temporary restraining order for the lower court ruling to go into effect. We don't know how they're going to rule on this. We know that literally with every day that passes, Cox's health and ability and reproductive health is put at a greater risk for a fetus that the doctors have said, and you can't say anything with assuredness ever. I mean, in terms of like medical outcomes, but has a incredibly low chance of being born alive. And in the event that the fetus was born alive and became a baby, that baby has a very low chance of not dying within the first month. And this is the future. It's the present too, where you need to petition a court to end your pregnancy, even if it's a threat to your health. And that's Texas for you. And, there are one of the implications of Donald Trump winning the election and having the opportunity to appoint 3 Supreme Court justices. That's it.